When you are attached, your sense of self lives outside of yourself. It is the only way to allow yourself to stop over explaining, stop over apologizing. I don't know about you, but I used to care too much about what other people think, what people thought of me, what they wanted me to do, and that ended up destroying me. No one tells you that caring too much can actually destroy you. In my marriage, I used to stop doing certain things that I enjoy because my partner wasn't fond of me doing them. In career, I chose career that I didn't really love just because I knew that the society deemed those career as being stable and respectable. I used to spend time with a certain group of friends that I didn't really have anything in common with them. They never really put any effort in for me just so that I could fit in. Until I started to realize that the more I actually care about what other people wanted out of me, wanted me to do, the more I started to really drift away from myself. Because along the way of being so attached to external validation, I sort of completely lost myself. If you're new here, my name is Poppy, and early on this year, I walked away from a 10 years marriage. It wasn't easy, but throughout this process, I've learned to really detach from the society expectation, detaching myself from thoughts of others, judgment from others, especially from friends and family, and detaching from the guilt of investing so much of my life into a relationship and the version of myself that only existed to make everyone else feel comfortable. And by doing that, it was kind of the beginning of what I know now. It was the beginning of me finding my own peace, my identity, and something that I like to call the art of detachment. But before we go any further, I want to talk about what detachment actually is. I think when people think about the term detachment, we think about not caring at all, but actually detachment is not about not caring. I've learned that the core elements of detachment is really about objectivity. It's seeing your own life and people in it for what it actually is recognizing that love, success, and validation, they are all beautiful things, but yet they don't have to define who you are or your self-worth. When you are attached, your sense of self lives outside of yourself. Your sense of self depends on how that person treats you, whether or not things works out the way you planned for, or whether or not other people approve your life choices. And when those things fall apart, you kind of fall apart too. In my marriage, I held on to this perfect family image for a long time because that was what I let defining my self-worth. You know, that success in marriage, being a good wife, that was all I knew. That's what I learned to do in order to be a worthy person. And it's not just about love. You know, maybe you're holding on to a job or a career that you hate because you're afraid that if you leave, people will judge you. People will say that you fail or that you've given up. And I know because I was once that person and I decided to change career. Maybe you're holding on to certain possessions, car, house, things that signal stability, success, even though they no longer serves you, but you still want people to hold on to that image of you being successful. And I was once in that mindset too, so I'm really speaking from experience here. So the first thing that I needed to tell myself or let myself understand when it comes to detaching was that I really needed to learn to stop trying to manage other people's emotions. And this one is so important because you have to understand that you're not responsible for how people feel about you, how they feel about your life choices, how they feel about your decision, how they feel about how you want to live your life. That is not your task. If you want to detach, you have to be at peace and comfortable that sometimes people might misunderstand you. Be okay with being misunderstood because that is definitely always going to happen when you decide to live your life in the most authentic self that you can. Understanding that you don't have to manage other people's emotions will allow yourself, it is the only way to allow yourself to stop over explaining, stop over apologizing for something that you weren't even responsible to begin with. It's not that you're being rude, you're still being nice and kind, but you're just not going to people please anymore. The second thing that I needed to learn to do was detaching from the outcome. And this one I found extremely difficult. As someone who is most of the time quite logical, and I do like to think about the future. I like to see how my decisions and my plan was going to pan out. I like to weigh out my pros and cons, but I had to learn that I could only control what I could control, and whether or not the outcome would be, that is completely out of my control. And this is something that I'm also trying to remember again at this point in my life where I am back dating again, because obviously I don't know how these connections are going to turn out. So I'm trying not to focus on the outcome itself. I'm trying to focus on what I can do and what I can control, and that is showing up as my true self, showing up as my best self, being my authentic self, giving everyone a fair chance to get to know me and myself a fair chance to get to know them. Not carrying my trauma or my wounds with me when I get to know them. And whether or not how these connections will turn out, I would just let it be and let it flow, because showing up with honesty, with openness and peace is the only thing that I can control. Another thing that I had to do is setting a very strong emotional boundaries. Because listen, if something constantly drains you, maybe it's time to take a step back. You don't have to keep entertaining it just because you can. And this is also another thing that I'm practicing right now in my sort of dating, going back to dating journey. I really pay attention on how people's actions and words make me feel. Because a lot of times people will say certain things and they will act another way, the completely opposite way. And that misalignment usually stresses me out and confuses me, and the lack of clarity usually just makes me feel uneasy. So I do really pay close attention if they start to make me feel uneasy, a little bit anxious, or feel like I have to prove myself all the time. Then that's when I know that I pull back immediately, because at this point in my life as an almost 40-year-old woman, I would rather choose peace than potential any day. And when it comes to choosing peace, I also would choose peace over being right. And this really hit home for me because in my marriage, everyone around me had an idea of what the right course of action was. What was the right thing to do? What was the right thing that I meant to do? And in their eyes, most of the time, it would be to talk it out, to stay, to try to make things work, even though I was betrayed. And I knew that staying in that marriage would mean that I would ended up betraying myself. I would betray my own values, my own moral compass. So when I walked away, a lot of people didn't understand and disagree with my decision. And that's when I realized that choosing peace might not look right for other people. But at the end of the day, I would rather choose peace than choose being right. And that is a decision that I don't regret. I hope this video has helped opening your eyes, seeing how you can be free from attachment of something or someone that others feel like important to them, but they may not be important to you, to your authentic self. And I hope it helps you seeing that detachment is not about being cold, it's not about not caring, but it is about having love and care with boundaries. It is about letting go. And letting go doesn't mean that you stop caring. It actually means that you finally start caring again about yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.